Hello, hello. Hopefully, everything's working as it should. Uh, I'll talk nonsense for a minute or two, let people get settled, put sugar in their coffee, etc. I hope everyone's surviving the lockdown well. It's a strange time of life. I've developed a dangerous addiction to Hellman's vegan mayonnaise. Getting through quite a lot of it. In fact, we've just taken delivery of a catering-sized tub of it. We've got a problem, you know. But you know, whatever you need to do to get yourself through, I think that's the within reason. So yeah, hope everyone's doing good. I hope everyone's been, making some music. I really hope people have been getting something from this and hopefully flexing your creative muscles and doing something nice. And I'm really grateful. No chicken, please. Yeah, I'm really grateful to the Glad and Creative Scotland for sort of asking me to come back and do some more of this. Because there's an awful lot you can do with Ableton, and I feel like I galloped a lot of it in the initial 3 sessions, and I hope that people were able to follow, or if they weren't entirely following in real time, are all still up. For people to go through it at their own pace. But today's going to be a sort of mixed bag of different things. There are so many things that I really like about Ableton. And for me, what I really like about it is that obviously you can use it as like you can use many other digital audio workstation software, Pro Tools, Cubase, whatever. There's Reaper. There's tons of them. You can use them to make a song. Excuse me, I'm a bit throaty today. To make a song from start to finish and do that. But for me, what's really powerful about it, I like to think of Ableton as an instrument, and I think you really can use it as an instrument. The way that you can get hands-on control of it so easily, and the way that you can connect different things together. How's my internet connection? Patchy. Hopefully I'm not breaking up too much. I'm dropping some frames here and there, but hopefully the show will go on. Just going to make sure that I'm not running any. Let's make Dropbox go away. Just doing anything bad? No, it seems okay. Might be dropping a few frames, but I'm sure people will yell at me on the YouTube if they need to. Oh, that's upsetting that we're not quite getting the. It worked so nicely when I tested it last night. Maybe everybody's streaming lots of Netflix at this time in the morning. I don't know. Well, we shall persevere and see how we get on. And if I always stop and lower the video quality to try and get things running happily. Okay. I'll attempt to start. So I think the first thing I'd like to talk about, I'm just going to start a new live set, and I'm not going to save what I was working on. Yeah, okay. Hopefully this will continue through. It does seem connected to the correct Wi-Fi. Well, let's see how we get on. So yeah, the first thing that I wanted to talk about for a little while was a bit more. We covered a little bit about racks in Ableton, and I just wanted to sort of talk a bit more about that. Firstly, in terms of what you can do with their instrument racks. So just to start, I'm going to find something. I'm just going to find, just as a note, I am actually now using the full Ableton 10 rather than the light version, although most things that I'm covering should still be applicable if you're using one of the Ableton Live Lite or one of the cut down versions. I'm going to attempt not to really do anything, also not to do anything that entirely requires you to have Suite, but yeah, should be okay. So I'm just going to start off by, I'm just going to find something. I'm going to find an instrument. I'm going to bung it in. I think I'll just put in maybe a piano. I don't know if I ever covered the fact that there is a search box up here as well. So if I've got the instruments tab selected here and I want a piano, I can just type in piano, and it'll give me the various in all the categories, all the sort of piano instruments, or all the patches that have been named piano. Glass piano. I'm just going to bring in a grand piano. There we go. Grand piano. And I've got my wee keyboard. So lovely. So I've got a piano. Great. Lovely. Excellent. Piano. Fine. And actually the piano itself is an instrument rack, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to ignore anything that this one's actually up to. I'm just going to select it. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say group. And if I click the, there's three little show hide buttons here. The middle one is a show or hide chain list. So now you can see there's a list of things. I mean, it's a list of one thing. It's not a very massive list, but it's a list of one thing. I've got this grand piano. So yeah, that's fine. I've got a piano, no problem. I'm going to go in, back to the browser. I'm just going to click this little X to get rid of my search term. I'm going to find something else. I'm going to find maybe a synth. I feel like maybe I want a synth pad sound or something as well. I'm just going to find something that's quite nice. Okay, so I'm going to drag this. I'm going to drag this patch where it says drop an instrument or sample here. Give it a wee second to load. Oh, give it quite a few wee seconds to load by the looks of things. There we go. Okay. Now if I play the keyboard, I get both at once. So that's nice. That's quite fun. Now I've got an instrument that is both a piano and a synthesizer at the same time. I don't really like the patch. I'm going to change it for something else. Oh, I've messed that up. I'm just going to Apple Z. Oh, what have I done? Oh no, I'm just scrolled along too long. Okay. Do excuse me while I find the patch that I like better, which I can do by using the hotspot button here as well. Pad choir, let's have that. Okay, great. Okay, so now I've got two things in my rack. So if I go out of hotspot mode, I've got two sounds at once. And for starters, you might notice that actually that pad sound is much louder than the piano. So if I just wanted them to just play at once, but I wanted that to be quieter, you'll see you've actually got the elements of a mixer for each part. We have this is the volume of each what it calls a chain. So I'm just going to take that, click and drag it down, and now that one's in a really weird key. Excuse me while I'm choosing all the wrong patches today. I don't know why. Right, let's see if this is any better. Oh, those go together quite nicely. And I'm just actually going to turn this one down even more. Okay, so that's how, you know, your classic sort of piano plus synth pad sound there. All very good, all very boring. It's fine. So that's the default thing that happens. If you drag two instruments both into a rack together, both in the same list, then they'll both just play. Whenever you play the keys, it's just going to play both of them, and that's fine, and quite useful. But ways it can that you can also work with this. So these little buttons just above the list of things are basically how you get to how the different parts interact with each other. And by default, it's on hide, which just hides all those options. So, well, the first one to look at, quite an easy one to understand. I'm going to click on key. And here you have a representation of a piano keyboard. And then you basically have a big box to represent each sound. And if I play some notes, hopefully you should see they're lighting up in red, just to show where they are. I'm just playing a little keyboard that I have beside me, just to have something to play. So these boxes, you can resize these so that you can do basically sort of keyboard splits, things you can do on quite a lot of arranger pianos. So for instance, if you move the mouse to the end of it, it turns into a little, and you can change the range of each one. So if I change them so that they're not really overlapping, then you'll lower down. You can see where it's lighting up red. Lower down, it's going to play that pad sound, and then high, it's going to play piano. I'm playing a little tiny keyboard here, so I don't really have many keys to play with. But if you're playing a decent sized keyboard, then that gives you a way to have a key split and play one sound with one hand and another sound with another hand. And this is you can stack this up in all sorts of ways as well. If you wanted to also add, you know, if you wanted the bottom half to play this synth pad and the top half to play the grand piano and another sound. I have no idea what this other sound I've dragged in is, but so that's how you can split things by key range. You know, it's by which notes are you playing. It's going to decide. Oh, if it's certain notes, it's just going to play this instrument. If it's other notes, it's going to play this instrument, and you can customize it how you want. You can and you can also with this, you can actually, if you can see, it might not be as easy to see in the stream, but this is a sort of green block, and there is actually a little white part along the top of it. If you move the mouse just to the top of it and drag it in, you'll see that it kind of makes this almost like a fading up line, and you can have it that it will crossfade between them on notes. Let's see how this. So you see, as I'm going, let's just move that one out of the way for the sake of my example. So you see it changing, sort of fading as we move up the notes. Excuse me while I check my messages. Okay, I'm just having a little conversation about video quality. I may be having internet problems today, which is annoying. Give me just a moment. Feel free to play with that while I have a little think. Could be that someone's been sabotaging the cell towers. We'll see. Just a moment. I'm is the video actually playing adequately, or is it freezing up? Seems to normally work lovely for me, but obviously, you know, the internet can be problematic. I'll try and do everything slowly today. Well, nobody's said in the chat yet upset with it, but we'll see. Okay, if people start finding that it's that the freezing is very distracting, I could take a wee 5 minutes and go offline, put my quality settings down, and restart the stream. Okay, sorry, I'll stop waffling. Okay, so where we've got to is yeah. So this is ways to make instruments depending on basically just it's going to play different instruments depending on which keys you are playing. I'm just going to go and sort of reset all these bits here. I'm going to get rid of this third instrument just for the sake of simplicity. I'm just going to reset these both so that they're just going to play up whatever key I play so that we can go and talk about the next one. So we were on the key mode. I'm going to move next to the velocity mode. Velocity, as we have covered a little bit before, velocity is basically just how hard did you hit the key. Technically, possibly how fast, but you know, it's about how hard you're playing. If you're playing this using the sort of inbuilt using your computer thing, you might find that this velocity thing doesn't really work for you because computer keys can only they're only on or off. They don't send any of that information. But this is this can be quite a useful thing. So if I play the keys, you'll actually see this little you'll see something popping up here, and this is actually showing me. So if I play very lightly, see it's quite down here, and as I start to play harder, you'll see that it's getting up there. So I can set up things so that the sound changes the harder I play. So for instance, I could make it so that it's mostly just going to be a piano. There, that's our piano. But if I play hard, then we start to get some synth. And just like the other one, just like the other mode, you also have this little bar at the top, which if you drag it, allows you to have it fade in. So I can have it so that just further up in the range. It starts to fade in that synth sound. So that's yet again another way that you can do that. And if you once again, if you wanted to do something much more complex with that, you can drag in more instruments. I'm going to leave that alone for now. And you could create yourself quite a complex setup, you know, with where you can just play one keyboard and you know, if you're someone who's very used to playing a keyboard instrument and working on how it responds, then you could create yourself something quite interesting. Hello, Julian. That's our friend Julian there in the chat. Lovely. Great. Once again, I'm gonna just put this back to normal, how it was, and go to the last one. The last mode it has is called chain, and really it has a chain selector. What's the best way to well, this is another thing with ranges, but what it actually does is it gives you a parameter that you can change. I'm just going to drag these both out so they fill the whole thing. I'm going to click. I'm going to hold shift and click on this one so they're both selected. It's 2 of 2 chains selected. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say distribute ranges equally. So it's basically just moved them here. So what's this chain selector? Well, basically, you'll see here, I've got the piano, and as I move it along here, then I've got the synth. So it allows you to make one rack that can have many sounds, and really good for something I'm kind of want to go on and talk about, which is just about how you can set up Ableton to be your instrument, you know, to have the things that you want in it. So if I, you know that I want to, oh, I've messed that up. If I, you know, have a few sounds that I know that I use a lot, maybe I'm going to put in an organ there, maybe I'm just searching for things that I might enjoy. Let's see if these all kind of work. Put in a sort of Wurlitzer here. I'm gonna actually just drag these all out again and take all the new ones. You can just do these ranges manually, but this is quite an easy way to do it. Just click on the first one, hold Shift, click on the last one, right click, distribute ranges equally. And now I have something lovely. I've got a sort of synth pad, I've got an organ, and I've got a sort of electric piano sound. And this chain selector thing here, if I right click in this area, this bar along the top, I can map it to a macro. And I've got my little, excuse me while I find where my mouse pointer's gone. So I've got my little controller here beside my keyboard, which is actually just to control the macros, I believe. No, it's not, but it will be in a moment. Almost. Still haven't worked out how this controller really works. I don't use it very much. Do excuse me while I mess around with this thing that I don't understand. There we go. There we are. So now I have quite an easy thing where I just have an easy way of going between a few different sounds, which is actually can be very useful, and it could be very useful if you're playing live. If you don't have a keyboard you can take to play live that has lots of sounds in it, suddenly Ableton could just be your keyboard workstation with a MIDI plug plugged into it, and that's that would be a very useful thing. So that's the very basics. Use instrument racks and the different ways that you can combine together different instruments to to create sounds that are your own. I guess another thing I wanted to look at, just basically another sort of example of a similar sort of workflow, is doing that with effects. It was something that I wanted to cover because I figure if there's people doing this, the likelihood that a decent proportion of your guitarists is fairly high. There are a lot of guitarists in the world. So I thought I would do just a quick little bit on some of the ways that you can set up. You can set up your Ableton setup to be a nice little kind of guitar rig and sort of pedal board setup as well, or the chord setup. So I do have somewhere. I do have one of those things, a guitar, one of those. So I've got my guitar. There you are. It's old. Someone set it on fire once. It's a bit knackered, but it works. So I've got an audio interface that you can't see here. So I've got an audio track here. Just a audio track. If you don't already have one there, you can go create, insert audio track, or use the shortcut, which is Command. That's the Command and T on an Apple machine, or Control and T on a Windows machine. Now we're going to make sure the top one is set to external in. I'm going to cover some of this routing stuff in a little while properly. Now, because I have a sort of multi-channel interface, so the next box down is which of the inputs on my interface is it going to be? I happen to know that it's input 3. So I'm playing my guitar and I'm not hearing anything. I want this track to just be on all the time. I want to always be able to hear my guitar. So this is the input monitoring selection. So that's monitoring is whether you're going to hear it. It's currently set to off, so we definitely won't hear it. You can set it to auto, which means that when the track is record enabled. There we are. But I'm just going to set it to in. Always in. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that's great. So I just wanted to talk through some of the effects that they have that are quite useful for a guitar, and some ways of setting yourself up quite a quick and easy pedal board. So effects. Well, I'm sure you can hear there's definitely one exciting and wonderful effect that I could definitely do with right now. Tuner. There you go. That's an excellent one. And you'll see that that works fairly similarly to any sort of guitar tuner. I'm not going to care if it's completely in tune, but you know, offend your ears too much when it's not even lunchtime. Okay, that'll do it. That sounds a bit more like a guitar. Okay, next thing. This is something I feel like people might quite often overlook. So normally, if you're in the house, you might be playing your guitar through an amp. Well, so let's have an amp. Let's drop that in. Now, before I do anything with this amp, I'm just going to turn the sound on my guitar off. I feel like this is something people might miss sometimes. They've actually, the guitar amp simulator they've got in here, they've actually split it into 2 bits. This part is the amp, and there's another one called cabinet. So basically, this is the actual part that does the amplification, and this part is the speaker. Just use the amp on its own. It sounds a bit rotten, but if you put a speaker in, then okay, that's starting. Sound a bit like a guitar. There's various options that you can do on these. For the sake of some things I'm going to do a bit later, you can choose whether it's a mono or stereo signal. I'm going to switch both of these to stereo. It actually is dual. I think it essentially makes it simulate 2 amplifiers and 2 speakers. But it's good if you're going to run any stereophonic effects in front of it, because otherwise it'll just mix them both down to mono. I'm not going to cover too much about this, but it's the amp module has quite a few. It basically has some emulations of different kinds of amps. It gives them name Boost and Blues and things. If you look at the pictures above, you can kind of get the idea. People never want to use brand names of things because it can. But I mean, Blues looks like that. Looks like it might be a Fender right there that they're going for. And you have kind of gain and bass, mid, and treble, and presence, and a dry wet, and all these things. The cabinet thing gives you a few different, different models of different sizes of cabinet and sizes of speaker. And you also get to choose what kind of virtual microphone is in front of the amp. But yeah, that's the basics of what I would do just to get a basic guitar tone. Also you might be in this lockdown thing in a place where your neighbours really hate it when you use your guitar amp. So this way you can get your headphones on and do your thing. But that's all fine and boring. But I would quite like to get into let's make a little pedal board. So I'm just going to pick maybe the first thing that's going to go in it, which is they actually made, this is a new effect in Ableton 10 that I've not played with much. There's one that's called Pedal, which is actually just, I believe it's based on some classic, well, some overdrive, distortion and fuzz pedals. Gonna give that a little bit of gain. Yeah, that's quite nice. I like that. I'm gonna leave the tuner, the amp, and the cabinet out of any rack that I make. So I'm just gonna click on this ped, and I'm gonna click group. So now this is inside a little group, and what I really want here is just to make a little collection of things that are sitting in a little rack with some really easy controls, just like a guitar pedal board would have. So I'm actually, this is the on-off switch for this effect. I wouldn't often use the on-off switching to control it, but for this pedal I think it'll work fine. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to go map to macro 1. Now you might have looked in for these macros, but if you don't and you want a quick and easy way to control it, let's go up here and click on key, and you can map things to keys on your computer keyboard. So I'm just going to choose some keys on my keyboard. Maybe I'm just going to map a few of these. Q, W, E, R, A, S, D, F. Don't know if I'll use them all, but go. So now I've got my. I'll show you the keyboard so that you can line. So. Whoa. Am I pressing the wrong one? Oh, I just didn't have Ableton there. Oh. Okay, so now that switches on and off with a key in the keyboard, and that's quite useful. And there's, you can basically do what you want with this. Maybe I want to put in some delay or some echo. Let's just add that. I'm just going to find, if I click here, I can see the presets for that particular effect. I'm just going to find one that one's a bit too weird for me. Let's have cool. And I'm actually going to, for the sake of argument, I'm going to right click on the dry wet control, map that to the second macro, and that's already set to my W key. The only thing is that the W key is making it go all the way on, all the way to the delay, and I'd rather it didn't. So I'll click on this little map thing, so that this macro, which is assigned to the echo, puts it to say 50%. And we'll switch that off. That's quite an insane delay, but that's fine. And if I keep going, I can. I'm just gonna find some nice things. I might have a reverb. I'm just gonna do the same thing. Gonna have a little short reverb, quite like that. Gonna map that dry wet. There are possibly slightly better ways of doing this, but for the sake of quickness, I'm just gonna do that. Go back to map. I don't want it to turn the reverb all the way up, so I'm just going to go to maybe 50%. So now I've got a little thing. I really like reverb, so I'm going to have another because they're fun. So I've already got a little short one. I'd quite like one that's like silly. If I want to get into some ambient territory, I'm gonna take the dry wet for that one, map it to macro 4, put it back over here, which I am once again going to click on this map, going to find the parameter for that reverb, which is here. And I'm going to change that so that it only goes up to, say, I might say 60 for that one, because that's I quite like that to be quite an extreme effect. So yeah, now I've got some, that's quite insane. You know, I've got some nice noises going on. I can put on that big reverb and get and just play random things, and already I'm having a good time. I could just about ignore you lot and just, you know, make some ambient nonsense for a while. One more thing, you know, I think you hopefully kind of get the idea of what you can do with that. I would couple of little things. The first thing is, if you click on one of these macro controls, well, actually, if you right click on them, you can rename them, which is quite a useful thing to do, so that you have an idea of what's going on. So I'll call that overdrive. Also, if you click on it and go, I believe, Command R, that's rename. That works on the bulk of things in Live. Can't remember what that one was. That's probably delay. This third one was reverb. Just say Rev 1, and then the other one, let's call that Rev 2. And just for a final effect, mainly because it's one that I don't think people realise what it can do. A lot of people, that there's one of these. I believe it's a slicer pedal that quite a lot of people have these days. Kind of chops up the audio. It kind of, you know, makes quite it's like a tremolo. It's quite fun. And so Ableton has an effect called auto pan, which you know, the general idea of an auto panner is that it would just automatically sort of pan things in the stereo field from left to right, you know, so you can get the sound of something sort of swirling between the speakers, and it does that quite well. But that's not what I wanted to do. So I've got this auto pan effect here, and at the moment you'll hear that it is doing nothing. If we turn up this amount, how much it's auto panning, depending on stereo speakers or not, you might hear that it's now swinging from left to right. How it actually does it is with an LFO, a low frequency oscillator, which we covered in the when we talked about synthesis, or an automatic knob wiggler, as I find that it's quite a useful way to think about it. It uses an LFO to basically be turning up and down the volumes of the left and right signal, but in opposite ways. So while it's turning up the right, it's turning down the left, and so on. It's phase control, which sort of says how the difference between what it's doing to left and right. If I put it all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom, it's doing the same to both sides. So now it's more like a sort of tremolo effect. If I change the rate control underneath, can say whether it's going from in a rate in hertz, which is just a measure of frequency, or if you click on the little note, then it'll be in time with the project. Just to demonstrate that, I'm just gonna change the main tempo to something that's not 120, because it's a very bad habit when you use music software that you always end up making music at 120 BPM, because that's the default tempo, and you just end up doing it all the time. So I won't. I'm just going to. This is just for my benefit. I'm just going to drag in a drum kit onto another track and just make a just very quickly, a little beat. Hopefully something that won't annoy me too much, but can give us a sense of rhythm. Let's see if that's alright. That's alright for now. This is really just so I can demonstrate. Going back to our guitar track. Also, I'm going to do something that is good practice here. Do this guitar track. Let's rename it and call it Guitar In. then we know what it is. Okay, I was almost done with this. So now we've changed this auto pan effect to just be doing things to the volume. It's now going to do it at the rate of a 16th note. But you can also change the shape of the way that it's moving the volume up and down. So if I change the waveform to be this sort of saw, then you get something quite nice that's yeah, quite nice kind of choppy effect that's also in time with the song, which is really useful. Okay, so we've talked about recording. Obviously, if I'm just going to click this track back onto auto. If we wanted to record some guitar on that track, we could do it just by record enabling the track. I'm just going to set it playing 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and if I play that again, I've recorded a bit of guitar. Just worth noting, you may already have realised this, but if you didn't, if I take Dio and drag it onto another audio track which doesn't have any effects on it, you'll notice all you're hearing on that track is that's just the absolutely raw sound of the guitar. So if you've taken the time to make yourself perhaps a nice keyboard instrument like we were talking about earlier on, which also could include effects and all sorts of things, if you've taken the time to do that, or if you've taken your time to make a little a nice guitar effect setup that you can play with, I'm just going to map that amount control onto a macro so that I've also got control of that. When you're recording guitar and you play an amp, generally you would be recording, you would be plugging your guitar into the pedals, the output of all the pedals, or through all the pedals, out of that into an amp. You would generally then, miking the amp, putting a microphone in front of the amp and recording that into your computer. And there's a lot of flexibility in the fact that you can just hear what is the raw sound of the guitar, and that means that you can then, fiddle with the effects forever, change your amp settings, do all the stuff after you've recorded the guitar part. That's good, but I think it's also, oh, my stream's dropping terribly. Yeah, that's good, but I think there's also something to be said for going, this is my guitar setup, this is my effects, this is what I have. I want to just record what's coming out of this whole setup. So let's talk about how you can route things from track to track. I'm just going to make sure that the input selection on this track is actually set to in, so that just my guitar's always on. I'm also just going to fiddle with that delay bit. Okay, so this track's our guitar input. I'm just going to have a couple more tracks, just for fun. Okay, I want to record this guitar setup with all the stuff, all the effects, all the amp, amp simulator and all that stuff, straight onto a track. Let's do it. So this fourth track here that I've got the mouse over. Okay, first thing we need to do. By the way, if you can't see this this section here in the middle, just in case you can't see it, there are a whole bunch of these little show hide buttons over at the right hand side of the screen. Which are quite useful because you can get things out of the way if you're not using them. In fact, you can get rid of all of them. But the one that we are, oh no, I've made everything go away and I'm sad. Okay, there we go. But the one that we are pretty here is the top one that says I/O, in and out, which is for track routing. Cool. So I/O, that's shown. Okay. So the top box, which says external input, let's click on that. We don't want an external input. We want to be recording something that Ableton's already making. And if we go down here, you'll actually see there's a list of all the tracks that are already in Ableton. That's our one that we called Guitar In. So if we choose that, and then record enable our track, now we can record whatever sweet jams we are doing with all the effects and everything already printed onto them. And I personally, I think that's sometimes quite a good way to work, especially if you're really kind of messing about with stuff. So if I record now, that was just a very short recording. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just recording some very short little snippets here. So yeah, and obviously I could then have another track, select the guitar input as its input. Yeah, so selecting the track that has all the guitar input and the effects and everything as its input, and that, you know, that continue recording stuff. Obviously, I could also be you know, changing my effects settings as I did different things, and that's a really good way to, you know, to quite quickly layer stuff up. More effect, I think, is that is quite an interesting one to cover, because I think it's a really good way of kind of creating sound beds and layers and things. Is that Ableton also has a looper. I'm just going to drag this onto this Guitar In track. So this is a sound on sound looper. A lot of people have sort of loop station. There's a lot of the Boss loop station pedals and things like that. And Ableton has an effect like that built in. So just to demonstrate, guitar. I'm just going to set, well, for the first example, I'm just going to stop this. So I can just going to find, let's get the silly sound on. Okay, so this has a big record button on it. Now the default behavior is that if I press it, it'll start recording sound at the start of the next bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have to press it again to stop. So that's recorded 2 bars worth of stuff into its little buffer. And by default, it's actually going to keep recording over the top of that. And what I've recorded is awful, but I can and it'll keep that recording, so you can keep playing and playing and playing, and it'll keep layering it up. Once I hit this button again, then I'm free to do what I want, and it's not going to record it over the top. Now there are a bunch of things you can do with this. Once you've recorded the loop, you have a speed control, which can also which works in the sort of old school tape machine way, where you turn down the speed and the pitch goes down, or you turn up the speed and it goes up. If you're looking for something that makes sense more musically, then the two little up and down buttons will change that speed to go up or down by half or double. Basically, it will make it go up an octave. you know, this can be quite nice for making textures. It also has a reverse button, which will reverse everything. And if I just click those off, you also have these two buttons here. You have undo, which will generally undo the last round of recording. And you also have clear. So if we go back to, I'm just going to leave the drum beat running for a moment. These two controls here dictate how the looper behaves when you first start recording. So this little plus icon, that means overdub mode. So what this means here is it's going to record for X bars when it says X bars. In answer to your question about the speed thing, I think when you mess, basically no, if you mess with this actual speed control, it will start to go out of time. I think when you use the octave, I'm actually just going to test this in a moment just to make sure I'm not talking nonsense to you. I believe when you use the octave, it kind of waits until the next change it, but we'll test this in a minute. Okay, so yeah, this means record X bars. X bars means when you press record for the first time, it'll start recording at the start of the next bar. We'll talk about that, the next bar part in a moment. And then you have to press it again, and it'll stop that recording, or it'll essentially loop round at the end of the next bar. And then this part means then it's going to go into overdub mode, so you can straight away, the next thing that it's going to be on. So just to demonstrate how that works once more, turn my guitar up and turn off the huge reverb. 1, 2, 3, 4. Click. And I'm not playing anything at the moment, but if I did, you'd hear it. So that's the default behavior, is that it would go straight into overdub mode, looping around. And if I click this play button, that puts it into play mode, where it's just playing back the stuff you've already recorded. If I clear that out, if you already know how long you want the looper to go for, to record for, you can just set that up in advance. So if I say 2 bars, now I don't have to press this stop, which is great. 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll just loop around itself after 2 bars. And just to clear it out, you can also set after it's done its initial part. Default behavior is that it would go into overdub mode, so you're then recording over the top of what you've just played. You can also change it so that it will go into play mode, so it'll just play back what you just played, but anything else you're playing will not be getting recorded. Just like this. And whatever nonsense I'm playing is not getting recorded, and that's great because I was playing absolute nonsense. It does seem that if you use the half and double speed, it will wait until the divisions in order to do it, so that it will stay in time, but obviously playing twice as fast or half as fast. But yeah, the looper is really great for layering stuff up. I'm just going to quickly chuck a bit of nonsense on top of this. And yeah, you can just click this button to kind of, once the initial thing is going, you can click this button to click in and out of overdub mode. So at the moment I'm sort of safe, I think, and as soon as I click it on, what's really fun about the looper is that it has this little bit on it that says, drag me, drag me. So if you click and drag, do what the thing says, then that whole thing, created parts, just everything that was recorded into it, all mixed together, comes out as an audio clip. So if I now click, now I've got a little loop to play with. That was just what's in the looper, and I've got a clear looper again, so I can, you know, I can do something else. And what I've recorded is nonsense, I think, but I can drag that out into another audio track. Clear the looper. And there suddenly we have a way of kind of generating, you know, generating quite, you know, quite interesting and different sounds. You know, by using some of Live's built-in effects, and you know, obviously you just about everything that I was just doing, just to demonstrate. Obviously, there's nothing to stop you using the looper on at the end of a keyboard track. I'm just going to stop all these clips. Well, actually, there's nothing to stop you doing either of these the techniques I've been talking about here. So for starters, if I, instead of recording a MIDI track, I just want to record down straight into audio, I can make an audio track and select this. First track was my instrument rack that I made before. I'm just gonna set this instrument rack to in so that it's always armed. Do this. Yeah, record arm the second track, start playing, and go. And you know, that's nonsense, but and obviously I can also, I'm just going to stop all these clips, maybe have a drum beat. Yeah, also I could, you know, if I wanted, I could, and if I really wanted, I could take this entire, just going to close up these little bits of this rack. I could take this effect track that I just made. If I click on it, hold E and drag it over here. Yeah, I could have all the same effects on my keyboard. Just as a matter of interest. No, it doesn't. That's fine. And I could have a looper on my keyboard track if I wanted. So, you know, if you've been watching this going, well, Gav, I don't have a guitar plugged in. You know, there's ways. I could have a looper. I'm going to set it to 2 bars. This is a bit nonsensey. This is quite a 90s workstation, new age kind of sound right here. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but hey, once again, I've got some sort of sound that I can drag out. I can just kill that looper if I want, clear it all out. That's all gone. By the way, when you clear the looper, it's like, unless you've dragged your, you know, used the drag me thing. Oh, yeah, excellent question, actually. Yes, you can use non-Ableton effects in an effect track, and actually I was going to use an example of that, and then I didn't, but I could. But yes, just to demonstrate that you can, hey, let's make a new track. This might mess things up terribly, but I'm going to set it to in is the sound of my voice. Okay, you might be hearing a bit of phasing because you're hearing my voice twice, but But yes, yes, you can use non-Ableton effects in an effects rack. Actually, let's just, instead of doing that, let's just boff one into this rack that exists. Enjoy. Actually, let's put one into this guitar effects rack. If I go to plugins, which is where you can add in things that are not from Ableton. This is one I use quite a lot when I'm using sort of on live input, called pitch proof. I'm just going to drag that straight onto that chain, give Ableton a little moment to go, my computer's getting a bit old these days. Just double click on that chain so that it shows me everything that's inside. I'm going to go and find where this plugin went to. It's all the way over there. This is like a little pitch shifter. I'm going to put it right before the other effects, because it does sort of try to detect the pitch of what's coming in, and if it's got tons of effects on it before it gets to it, it might get sad. But yeah, this is a little pitch shifter, so that's adding an octave below onto my guitar. And if I wanted to control that from the macros, you just have to click this little extra chevron to open up the things, and I would control is basically like a dry wet control. I just have to right click. I can assign that to a macro. And you know, there we go. That's another fun thing that we can do. So yes, the answer to your question, can we use non-Ableton effects in an effects rack, was absolutely yes. I've like waffled on about racks and why I love them for quite a while. So I hope in some way I've demonstrated that. Well, basically, what I think is really nice is, you know, obviously what we did before was, you know, just using some instruments and recording some MIDI parts. But I think sometimes if you can make yourself an instrument on one track that you can play with, then routing that as we did by, you know, choosing the track as an input to an audio track and just recording the actual sound of it makes you have to make decisions. Or it makes you have to own your decisions instead of being able to just record your dry guitar and then put effects on it afterwards and endlessly change it and tweak it. I think it's very useful to, you know, just treat it as an instrument, capture the sounds that you're making. Worth noting there, just while we're talking about some of these routing options, where you can obviously take things from other tracks, you can also select I've just made a new track here. Yeah, if we go to here, where it says external in normally, there's actually another one that's called resampling, and that actually selects, it basically will give you everything that's happening. So I can actually, I'm just going to set some stuff playing. I'm going to record the name of this track. I'm going to record a little bit of it just to demonstrate. And if I stop all the clips and just play this one that I've got here, that's basically it's basically giving what's going out of the master. It's resampling the whole lot into one clip, which, you know, could be useful for you. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with clips, and I think interesting things you can do with clips is what I'm going to be covering in the next little while. I think I might take this opportunity after an hour to give all of our brains a little a quick break, and also visit the facilities. You know, get a drink of water, do what you need to do. How about I see you in 5 minutes? I'll leave the most ambient of loops running just for you to. There you go. You enjoy them. I'll be back in 5, and we're going to talk about some of the amazing things that you can do with clips. Okay. Hopefully that was, that might only have been 4 minutes. Yes, as I'm assuming Joe from the Glad is pointing out, we do have a little group there on Facebook. If folk have stuff that they really would like me to cover, I'm totally happy to. I think in some ways I'm covering things that I find inspiring about Ableton. So you are getting a skewed view, I suppose, but that's okay. You're getting a view coming from my sort of a lot of my ways of using it. But there are a ton of ways to use Ableton. Just trying to give you some ideas. Should I continue working with this project or should I make a new one? It's quite messy at the moment. A quick note on having good habits. I'm quite bad at having good habits when I'm using Ableton because I tend to work quite quickly, and I'm very bad for not naming tracks and not naming things like that. I recommend on that front, don't be like Gav. Don't be like Gav. Name your tracks as you're going along. It keeps things tidy. Ableton also automatically colors all the tracks. There are options in the preferences menu to change how it does that, but you can also you can recolor things. So if I click on this guitar in track, you could decide to have your own way of doing things that maybe, well, say I've got these resampling, yeah, grabbing a bunch of drum mics and messing with them all together. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a way to do it. And once again, that's a way of going, I'm just making the decision. This is how the drum kit's going to sound. And I think sometimes that's quite a nice way of doing things. Yeah, I mean, you can also yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with clips in Ableton. And that's kind of what I'd like to talk about now. I'm probably just I'm gonna delete some of these tracks just to tidy things up. I don't think I need all this. By the way, a couple of things you can do, and maybe I won't delete them all. A couple of things you can actually do with tracks, just depending on how you want to work with things. So you can rename them. Maybe I'll just call this loops 1, loops 2, and it's already called those ones looper guitar. It does automatically name things depending on certain things. Obviously, this track, as I dragged in a kit called 909 Core Kit, so it just called the track that. This one had an instrument rack on it, so it called it that. You can recolor stuff. If you right click, it gives you colors. Maybe you want to have if you have a particular way of working, maybe I would want all my sort of live input tracks. By the way, you can multi-select, click on a track, hold shift, click on the other one. Maybe I just want to make all of them this color, and I'm not going to tell you what colors to make your stuff. Also, just if I'm talking about how you can color stuff, you can also color macro controls. If you right click on them, maybe I want my overdrive to be red. Maybe I want my, time-based effects like reverbs and delays to be oceanic blues. You can do that just to make things look how you want. You can also resize the tracks up here. Just if you have stuff that you is doing its job, but you don't really need to see it very much, or if you have a lot of tracks and you want to be able to see them all at once, you can resize them. So maybe I'll just do that to keep these out of the way. Let's talk about clips. Let's talk about what you can do with clips. I'm going to make a new track. I'm going to make a new MIDI track for now. I'm just going to find an instrument to put on it. I'm not really overly bothered what it is. I'm probably just going to drag on Analog, which is a little analog synth plugin that's based in Ableton. Now you heard more than one thing there. That's because I still have the input monitoring on my big instrument rack here set to in. I'm just going to click that to off so that I'm only listening to this one if I play the keyboard. That's quite loud. I'm just going to have a very quick fiddle with this synth. I don't want to get bogged down in talking about synths too much because that's not really what I'm trying to demonstrate here, but I'm just going to have a quick fiddle with the controls to make it a bit more what I want it to be. Even though it's a different layout from Simpler, hopefully you will recognize things like filter controls and some envelope controls and things like that. I'm just going to have a quick fiddle just to... Oh, great, that's fine, that'll do. Don't really bog down on what the synth sound is. So I'm just going to double click in an empty space and I'm going to... and I'm going to press B to go into pencil mode. I'm just gonna put something in. I'm just gonna put in a chord. That's fine. I'm gonna go off B. I'm gonna select them all, and I'm gonna maybe make them a bit longer so that they just last for a beat. So what we haven't really talked about is the way that you can change things about how the way that clips behave. So the absolute default in Ableton, the default mode is just that. Well, I'm just going to start this drum beat going so that I can demonstrate it. Okay, so the drum beat starts. That's fine. That's just going to run. It's going to loop. It's going to loop forever. Now that the transport is running, i.e., you know, the stuff is playing. This clip that I've just made, if I trigger that, it's going to start at the start of the next bar. That is the default behavior. So if you can see, we're on 3, 4, 1, 2. So if I click on it on the second beat, it's still just going to come in at the next one, and then it's going to loop. And that's all very boring. So I'm just going to make a couple more clips. I'm just gonna make some more. I'm just gonna make a couple little simple clips with some different chords. Actually, I'm gonna delete that one. I'm actually gonna copy this clip. You don't have to do exactly the same thing as I'm doing. I'm just gonna select one of the notes, hold Shift and up, put up the octave, so I've got a slightly different inversion of the same chord. That's cool. I'm going to make a new clip. I'm going to make a different chord. I've been playing too much jazzy nonsense on pianos, so all my chords will have sevenths in them, or maybe a 9. Yeah, let's have a little 9. That's quite fun. I'm going to copy that again. I'm just trying to make a bunch of different clips with some chords in them. That's just doing that again just to make a different. So I've got that one. Yeah, and that one. Oh yeah. Maybe I'll have one more chord. Maybe something in the G department. Doesn't matter what they are. It's fine. And I'm just going to do one little variation on that chord just for. Okay. Great. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for the sake of sort of demonstrating this stuff, I'm also going to. I think I will assign them to some keys on my keyboard to trigger those clips. So just to show you how you can do that, I'm just going to quickly switch my camera angle around. There we go. So yeah, you can MIDI assign the clip launches, which is quite useful. So if I either click up here where it says MIDI, just clicking that on and off, or Command M or Control M if you're on Windows, I can click on a clip. And I'm just going to press a key on my keyboard. Click on the next one. I'm just going to put the next key in, the next key up, and then the next key up, and then the next key up, and then the next key up, and switch off MIDI assign mode. It's also just worth noting you can also assign empty slots, which then if you press that key, that'll start recording in that slot. That's not what I'm going to do right now, but that's fine. That is a brief aside. So now I can, yeah, that's great. So that's cool. I can, I've got a bunch of different chords that I can trigger just by pressing one key, and that's quite fun. So we already said that the default behavior is that when I trigger the clip, it's going to start playing at the start of the next bar. What if we wanted to do something different? Okay, so I'm just going to double click on this first clip, and I'm going to go down to the bottom. there's some of these little show and hide buttons that Ableton has all over the place to show and hide different things. The one on the furthest on the left is the launch box. Launch being, you know, when it launches a clip, when the clip is triggered. You know, whichever way you're doing it, whether you're clicking on it with the mouse, or whether you've assigned it to a key on your MIDI keyboard. It's also just to make sure you know, if you go into key mapping, I could also use, you know, assign that to a key on my keyboard, my computer keyboard. So if you're following along and you don't have a MIDI keyboard plugged in, you could just go through and assign these to keys on your keyboard. Also, if you want to, you can also get rid of all your previous assignments. Same way as many things, click on first one, click on last one while holding shift, delete them all. But I've already assigned these. Great. So, I'm going to go down to the launch options. First thing I'm going to look at here. Okay, quantization. So we talked about quantization a little bit when we were recording MIDI parts. Generally, quantization, you know, takes something and puts it into time in some way. So, you know, in the context of recording MIDI parts, if you selected all your MIDI notes you'd recorded and quantized them, it'll put them all onto the beat or onto whatever you've chosen, the nearest 16th note or the nearest fourth, you know, quarter note or whatever that you choose. So the default quantization setting for a clip is global. What does global mean? At the top of the screen here, this thing that says 1 bar, that is the global quantization thing. So basically, currently, the fact that it says global, that means that it's set to 1 bar, which means when you trigger it, it'll trigger on the next bar. So that's perfectly fine, but let's click on this box and see what we can do. Let's set it to quarter notes, and now if we play the thing, I can have it trigger on quarter notes, and that's quite nice. Worth mentioning for the next part that you can change settings on multiple clips at once. So I'm going to just click on the first clip and the last clip. Now you'll see this quantization setting now has a little, I think it's a little asterisk. I'm quite far away from the screen. In it, and you'll see that for instance, this bit has a little kind of cross-hatched kind of pattern to show that you've selected multiple clips. And the reason this has a little asterisk in it is because I've selected clips that have a different setting. But if I just click on it and choose one, now it's going to change all those clips to have the same thing. I'm going to set them all to have a quantization of 16th notes. And now I'm just going to stop the stuff that's in that track. Now I can trigger them all in 16ths, and suddenly I can have some fun with it. That's quite cool. That's a lot of fun. The another thing that you have here is the launch mode. So the default is that, you know, when you either click on the little play button or when you click on the little play button or you trigger it with a controller that has been assigned to trigger that clip. If you mouse over it, it actually tells you. Mouse down starts the clip, mouse up is ignored. For that, you can happily read the same way as key down starts the clip, key up is ignored. So, you know, once you press it, it happens. And the clip will play. Gate mode means that it'll start playing the clip when you put the key down or click the mouse down on it, and it'll stop playing it as soon as you lift it up. So. That's quite a nice way to do it, so that now I can almost have long and short notes. So, you know, if I made this chord longer, then I could have. So yeah, the longer I'm holding the key down, the more it happens. Toggle is a little bit like the first option, but it just means if you press it once, it starts playing. If you press it again, it stops playing. So it started playing and it'll keep playing, and if I hit the same control again, it'll stop. That's quite good. And the one that's quite fun here, which I'm going to just switch this one back to gate actually. I'm going to switch some of them onto gate, because gate's quite fun. And this second one, which is currently still set to trigger, I'm going to set that to repeat. Repeat means if you're holding down the control, it's going to just repeat it from the start, and it's going to repeat it based on this quantization setting. So if that's eighth notes, quarter notes. So maybe I'm just gonna change some of these to be on repeat mode and some of them on gate mode. And now I've got and obviously yeah, that's that. Suddenly I've taken a few quick little chords, bunged them into some clips, but now I've got a way of playing with them, and I can. We've been in session view this whole time, so let's. I'm going to hit tab and head across into the arrangement view, and I'm just going to click record. There's no, so this drum beat is currently playing, so it'll also get recorded in, and I'm totally fine with that. So just going to switch over, press record, and I'm going to play some stuff in and go. So that's our analog track here. You'll see that it's this is sort of faded out. We're going to click our back to arrangement button so that it's now going to be playing what's in the arrangement view instead of what's in the session view, the other view that we were just in. I'm just gonna, I want to have a little loop around this part, so I'm just gonna use our loop brace and move it so that it's over these 8 bars. Set the loop to be on. And so you'll see that it's recorded all these little chunks of clips doing whatever they were getting triggered to do, and it's actually recorded all the notes. And this is a bit messy, but if I decide that I really like what that was, well, I can click at the start, drag over all of it, right click, and consolidate. And there it's made a whole new MIDI clip by consolidating together all those things, all those little chunks of clips together into a whole new part. And even if I want to continue working with that in the other view, I can drag it back in. And hey, we've just made a whole new, and hopefully think, interesting MIDI part just by using some of the options in the way that you can trigger clips. You know, you don't just have to make a 4-bar part and say, I'm gonna, when I start it, play the 4-bar part. You can, you know, you can use it to make very short little snippets of ideas and trigger them in a way to find something that you find inspiring. Another thing you can do with clips. Okay. Coffee. So another thing you can do with clips, which is wild, I really love it. I'm just gonna yeah, I'll do it twice because there's a couple of fun things to do with it. So we've got this little drum loop running, and it's it's quite dull, to be honest. I'm gonna make a new track. I'm gonna make a new MIDI track, which I've done with Command Shift T, or you can also go to Create and insert MIDI track. I'm gonna find a drum kit. You know, I'm just gonna find a drum kit. What I'd really like is one that has quite good. I'm not so bothered about the bass drums and stuff. I just quite like some good like percussive noises. For the sake of argument, let's give this one a try. Give it a second to load. Oh, excuse me. So I'm going to do something a little bit similar to what I was doing a minute ago. I'm just going to make some little short clips. Just going to double click to make a new thing. Press B to get into my pencil mode. And to be honest, I'm just going to make some clips that are only, say, a bar. You know, I'm only going to really bother about the first part of the bar for reasons that will hopefully become obvious. Yeah, hopefully become obvious in a minute. I'm just going to try and make some ones that have some variation. I'm just going to make a few. This one's got some quite weird effects on it. I quite like it. I'll make one more. Why the hell not? Okay. So, same way as before, what I could do with this is, you know, assign all these clips to be controlled by keys on my keyboard, and I could change the you know, I could change the quantization down to something quite low, you know, something quite small, and, you know, like 16ths, and just, you know, just try fiddling about with them to have, you know, come up with a little percussion part to go over everything. Why don't we get Ableton to do it for us? Why not just let the computers do our jobs so we can live in a utopia? Yeah. We're going to talk about a little thing called follow actions. So this is another thing about the behavior of clips that you can set. So I'm just going to click on this. Just going to select this first clip for now. Double click. So back down to our launch options that we were fiddling with before. Okay, follow action. Okay, so these are a little bit strange. I think the best way to explain it is by default, follow actions don't do anything. You can just think of them as being switched off if you haven't fiddled with any of the controls on them. What a follow action does is after a certain amount of time, which you set here, which by default will be set to 1 bar, you can make it do something. So for instance, I could make it so after 1 bar, you have a whole thing here. I mean, most simple way to demonstrate it would be after 1 bar, it's going to play the next clip down. Okay, so trigger it. Okay, so it did it. After 1 bar, it played the next clip down. You know, fine. Useful? Okay. Let's go a bit further. Well, firstly, this clip's only got stuff in the first beat of it. So these 3 numbers here, bars, beats, and 16ths. I'm just going to drag this number down. So currently now, this is going to, after 1/16th, it's going to play the next clip. So it just went, and then played the next one. I'm going to make it go after 1 beat. 1 beat. So hopefully you can see that that's, you know, it's got a little automatic thing that it does. But here's the thing. You can give it 2 things to do and then say how likely it is that it's going to do them. You can imagine that after the amount of time that you've set here, it's going to roll some dice. It's going to roll some dice depending on what it rolls. It's going to do one thing or another. And this is a great way to get live to kind of generate some sort of generative elements, some things that will happen with an element of randomness that can create something very interesting. So I'm going to stop just editing the 1 clip. I'm just going to try and select them all, give them all roughly the same behaviors, and see what they do. Once again, you'll see that these some of these parameters now have a little asterisk in them. That's because I have edited one of them, but not the others. So I'm going to say after 1 beat, so I've just typed in a 1 into that box, so that's after no bars, 1 beat, and no extra 16ths, we're going to do something. So I'm going to say, first one, I'm going to say play again. Okay, one choice it has at the end of a clip is just to play itself again. The other choice I'm going to give it is, so you can make it play the next clip down. You can make it play the next clip up from it. You can make it stop entirely. You can make it play the first or last clip in a group. So just as a demonstration, if I make a new clip here, basically it will treat a group as all the ones that are connected to each other. So these ones are all in a group together. This little guy at the bottom, not in the group. They're all on their own. Just to go back to where I am. Okay. Yeah. You can make it stop. You can make it play itself again. You can make it play the one above, the one below, the first one in the group, the last one in the group. You can make it play anything in the group, or you can make it play anything in the group except itself. I'm just going to click the second option to other. So all these clips are now set so that they're either going to play themselves again or play any other clip in the group. Now the last thing we have, this is the chance. So this is how likely it is that it's going to play itself again, which is currently 1. It is 1 likely. And this is how likely it is that it will play any other, which is currently set to 0, which is not likely in any way. Never, ever, ever going to happen. Oh, you're saying is this me using the MIDI controller as a sampler? Yes, in a way. Even though what it's playing back is actually still just MIDI clips, it's still just sending notes to that software synthesizer. Anyway, I'm way past that now. I just wasn't looking at the thing. So yeah, follow actions. They're crazy. So I'm just going to put a 1 in both of these boxes, which means it's equally likely to play itself again or play another one. Let's just trigger it and see what happens. now you can see that they're kind of just getting on their merry way. And you'll see that they're repeating themselves quite often because they're equally likely to repeat themselves or play a different clip. I'm going to make sure I still have all these selected. I'm going to make it, say, put a 1 and a 3. That means that one time out of 4, it'll play itself again. 3 times out of 4, it's gonna play a different one. And maybe I'm gonna make the follow action happen sooner. Let's make it after. Not sure if this is the finest example, but now we have a little generative percussion loop going along that just kind of, it's always a little bit different. Nice to jam along with, you know, something that's good fun, and we you know, combine that with what we had before. I understand that follow actions are they're a bit crazy, but they're fun. I mean, you can also, if we want to do something quite a lot more, a bit less random and a bit more, you know, kind of standard with a follow action. Here's something you can do. Okay, I'm just going to make in my normal drum kit thing, I'm just going to make a really simple little drum beat, just, you know, maybe something like that. Okay, and next clip down, I'm going to make a terrible drum fill. That's terrible. I already know it's terrible. And the next clip down, I'm going to make another terrible drum fill. I would recommend that you don't make terrible drum fills, make great drum fills. There you go, that's going to be awful. So let's make a little drummer that will choose one of 2 drum fills. How do I do that? Well, normally you would put a drum fill in on, say, the 4th bar out of 4, you know, or the 8th bar out of 4. But I'm going to say this drummer is going to play a fill every 4 bars. Okay. So follow action on the first clip. I'll even name it main beat, and I'm going to name this fill 1. I'm going to name this fill 2. Great. Just so we all know where we're at. Okay, this main beat. I'm going to set it 3 bars. Follow action. 3 bars. After 3 bars, there's not going to be no choice. It's not going to have a choice of 2 things. It's going to play another clip in its group. Not any clip, because any clip it might play itself again. I want it to play another clip in its group. So it's going to then play, there's only 2 other clips, which are these 2 fills. Now I'm going to select both of these fill-in ones at the same time. And they are, after 1 bar, the only choice that they need is that they're going to play that first clip in their group, which is the main beat. So let's trigger the main beat and see what happens. So it's the 3rd bar, and it'll play that one, and it'll go back. And this time it's chosen a different fill. obviously I could, you know, copy these clips. I've copied them, which means the MIDI will be the same and all the options will be the same. So if I copy and just make another terrible fill, that's gonna be dreadful. Excellent. Gonna really enjoy that one. Let's just do this one the same, except move the sounds about. Great. Now it's got more choices. So hopefully I've managed to show you how you can use follow actions to introduce either elements of, you know, really quite random stuff like in this percussion thing, or some just some, you know, basic choice-based stuff that can be quite controlled. And you know, you could just to demonstrate another thing you could do, knock through this last little example quickly. It might help if I can remember what key that chord part's in, but that's fine. I'm just going to make another MIDI track. I'm going to chuck in something, chuck in a little analog. Oh, I'm going to turn the filter down a bit because it's a bit harsh. And I'm just going to put some blimmin' reverb on it so that it sounds nicer. That you don't have to do that. That's not important. That's just for me. So I'm going to try going through a similar process. I'm just going to make some little short clips. I'm just going to put a single note in each one of them. And this, you know, this is the sort of thing that might turn out great and might be awful. I'm really not sure. I'm going to find out, you know, when I do it. Right. I think, you know, this has the potential to be absolute nonsense. I'm going to select all these clips that I've just made that all just have a single note in them. I'm going to make their follow action be, well, let's start off by making it after a single 16th note that they're going to roll the dice and see what happens. So they're either going to play themselves again or play any other clip. And I'm going to make it much more likely that they play another clip. So 1 + 4 is 5. So, you know, 1 time out of 5 it'll play itself again. 4 times out of 5 it'll play a different clip. This might be about to be complete nonsense, but it might be genius. We'll see. The computer's in charge, but I'm in charge of what the computer does. That's a terrible note. That note is not in key. Okay, it might not be complete genius, but hey, we're getting the computer to write the melody for us. Maybe I could change some of the clips. I'm selecting one, then holding Command and clicking on some of the other ones just to select individual ones together. Maybe I'll change it so that some of them last for 2/16ths before they do their follow action. And there you go. I didn't even have to write a melody. Ableton did it for me. Ableton wrote my percussion part for me. It's great. I'm not suggesting that you don't write parts yourself, but this can be quite a nice way of just adding some randomness into your tracks. I feel like there's as always, I feel like there's a lot of things I probably haven't told you. Just to kind of go back to the. I'm just going to go and clear out all my MIDI assignments. Because there was a reason earlier on why I'm just going to stop all the clips. I'll play a little drum beat. There you go. Obviously, we were doing that stuff by assigning, triggering different clips that we had earlier on. Remember when I was playing my guitar badly and recording bits of it? I recorded these little clips. So I can treat these audio clips the same. I'm not going to do any follow action stuff on these, but just in terms of the way that you can trigger them, I can assign these to MIDI. I'm actually gonna. This is just to show you that you can do all sorts of fun things with audio as well. I'm just gonna assign these to these notes as I go. Boof. 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 Great. And I'm actually going to make a copy of each one, and maybe I'll. But when it's audio clips, you have a whole load of other options, and I'm getting vaguely towards the end of the session, so I'm not going to go too crazy on them. But you do have a transpose option, so. And Ableton, I mean, this is another thing I haven't got into at all, really, which is the fact that Ableton can do quite a lot of sort of time stretching, pitch shifting. You know, you can change the tempo of projects that you've recorded audio into it, and it will slow things down while maintaining their pitch. You have various different modes of the way that it deals with the audio. It uses all sorts of trickery and witchcraft and such, but you can change some of these time stretching modes or pitch shifting modes to kind of find the one that sounds the nicest to you. But anyway, I'm just I'm not gonna get too into that at the moment. I'm just doing this to have some variation on these clips. Just going through, making a copy of each one and transposing it up an octave. So now I've got and then I'm going to click on one, hold shift, select the last one, click on the last one to select them all, change their quantization all to 16ths so that I can have a mess around with them, and maybe click on the second, hold down command, and click on the fourth and the sixth, and I'm going to change their launch mode to that repeat mode because I quite enjoyed it. And now that's, that's basically the same as what we're doing with MIDI. We're now doing with audio clips, and we could, once again, do the same thing. Yeah, there you go, and that's recorded all those little chunks exactly the way that you played them. And same as with MIDI parts, you can select it all and right click and consolidate. The only thing is with audio, it makes a whole new clip out of it. Which is an offline process. Which is to say that if you want to consolidate an audio clip, it will stop the audio for a minute. It'll stop playing for a second because it has to take a little break and think about it. audio clip that I can mess with even further. And then you could start doing, you know, some of the things we were doing the other week with, say automation, or you know, you've got a whole world of fun at your fingertips. You know, maybe then I can put a filter on that, and I'm just going to press record so that I can. Twisting some knobs, have some fun with it. That's just automating the send to these sound effects over here, which I haven't even looked at what they are. And hey, you know, I could make a new track, find oh, haha. Well, I did it, guys. I crashed Ableton. Been a while since I've managed that. I did upset Ableton. Let's see how well it recovers. I've found that Ableton Live generally... I've only been using Live 10 for a relatively short amount of time. Yes, Chris, I agree. I'm literally using Reaper at this point to do a little bit of light tickling to my voice. I've only managed to crash Reaper once in my life, but this is not a Reaper tutorial. I mean, it's 1 o'clock. I've crashed the software. It's probably time for me to give up. But actually, Ableton does crash occasionally, but it's actually pretty much recovered itself to the point where we were. Now I'm really interested. I'm going to sign off in a minute, but now I'm just very interested to know whether doing the same thing. The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Yeah, there we go. That's interesting. Okay, I'll be investigating that one. I'm probably going to report that crash to Ableton because it can be recreated. Okay, I have crashed Ableton. I've worked out how to destroy it, but I think that's the universe trying to tell me something, which is probably that it's lunchtime. I hope people have learned something today. I feel like I'm getting into some more esoteric ways of using Ableton, but I think the idea of being able to set up, for instance, you know, just a little rig to use with your guitar, or a little rig to, you know, for you to have access to quite a few keyboard sounds and some effects to put on them all in a rack together, and then record that audio into other tracks, and then you can take the audio that you've recorded and manipulate it further, trigger the samples from, you know, trigger samples that you've created using your own racks, using your keyboard, and then resample that once more into another track. I think that hopefully I've got across the fact that you know, you can really use a very iterative workflow. You know, create some effects, play an instrument, sample it further, sequence that. Yeah. I'm still, yeah, if anyone really does have any stuff they'd like me to cover, I'm totally up for that. I will be back next week to teach you more interesting things. If anybody, yeah, if anybody has any ideas, there is a Facebook group, etc. You can let me know if there's something you wanna cover. If anyone was completely baffled by the entire thing, let me know, or rewatch it. And if you're still baffled, just tell me that it was nonsense, and I'll happily, I will happily do the thing. Also, you may have seen the little ticker along the bottom of the screen the whole time. If you do have any money to spare, and you can donate it to the crowdfunder for the Glad Cafe, because music venues, grassroots music venues, are having a hard time with the fact that they can't be open doing what they do. Other music venues are also available. There are many excellent venues in Glasgow, but the Glad is a particularly lovely one. Yeah. And I understand we're all going through hard times, but if you happen to be in a luckier position than others, then please do try and give something to help them survive this situation. Okay, I've rambled enough. It's probably time for me to go and have some beans on toast and put about a gallon of mayonnaise on all of it. I'll sign off now, and thank you very much, and I'll see you all